StrayAllDay.com.
Now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that's called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is, what are you pretending not to see? That is a question we're going to address. But before we get into this, let me remind everybody, I send out a text message every Monday called the Monday Motivation, guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point to start your day. I also send out daily motivation. We give you an option for that as well. All you got to do to receive that message for free is to text me at 305-384-6894. And every Monday when that message comes out, you'll be getting it free of charge. You want to get the daily motivation, we'll tell you how to do that as well as soon as you text us. Secondly, Work on Your Game University. That is where I do all of my coaching. You want to work with me directly. You want to be coached by me. You want to join a group of forward-thinking people who are as serious about their goals, as you are. Then come to workonyourgameuniversity.com. That link is down below in the description as well, and you can get started working with us inside the university. All that out of the way. Is that everything? Yes. Let's get into the topic, which is, what are you pretending not to see? Person I'll have to give credit for, the first person I heard ever say this in a way that stuck with me, and I heard this a while ago, was pre-politics Donald Trump. This was Donald Trump that everybody looked up to as a successful brand person and businessman. I once heard him say this, and he was talking about himself as an entrepreneur and about how he ran his businesses. And before he got into politics, Donald Trump had many admirers as far as how he ran his business, and for good reason. He has a couple of books on business that I think are actually good books. If you, as a reader, can separate the messenger from the message, there's a lot of good stuff you can get out of the books that he wrote, like The Art of the Deal, which, and when I say he wrote, I know he didn't actually sit down and write it, but a lot of people who are politicians, athletes, entrepreneurs, musicians who quote unquote write books didn't actually write them. So I'm not going to keep adding that anytime I mention somebody wrote a book, because a lot of people don't write their own books. But anyway, a few of his books. He has one called The Art of the Deal, which is a great book. He has another one called Think Big, and it was called Think Big and Kick Ass, but for some reason they changed the title. They took the kick ass part out, and it was just called Think Big. When I read it, they had just changed it to Think Big, or yeah, I read it, it was called Think Big and Kick Ass, then they changed it. They took the ass part out and they just changed it to Think Big, but I like that one. And he has a book that he wrote with Robert Kiyosaki. I think he wrote two books with Robert Kiyosaki, at least two. He might have wrote more than two, but one of them was called Why We Want You to Be Rich, a great book. And there was another one called Fake. I'm not sure that was Trump and Kiyosaki. It might have just been Kiyosaki by himself. But anyway, you should look up these books. You should be reading all these books. Any of the books that I mentioned, you should read them. Even if you get only one useful tidbit out of it, it was worth it to read through the book and see what you can get. There's probably more usefulness out of that than you'll get from watching TikTok videos. So anyway, when Trump was talking about this running his business, he said anytime he's experiencing a problem in business, he would discipline himself by asking himself this question. That's today's topic. What am I pretending not to see? What am I ignoring? This is a very good question, and today's topic is based on that. Point number one. Today's topic, once again, is what are you pretending not to see? You got to address the elephants in the room. That's the first point. For those of you not familiar with this concept of the elephant in the room, it simply means, everybody knows what an elephant is, right? Okay, so elephant's a pretty big animal, generally speaking. So if you're in a room and there's an elephant in the room, you can't not see the elephant. But what happens with a lot of us in life is that we act like we don't see the elephant, even though the elephant is right there in the room. And again, it's so big. If there's an ant or a roach or a mouse in the room, maybe you could not see it. But an elephant, you can't pretend to not see that. So I'll give you an example. My grandmother on my father's side, she is still alive. I talked to her a couple of weeks ago, as a matter of fact. And she's in her probably late 80s. I think she's got to be in her late 80s by this point. I don't know the exact number, but probably closer to 90 than she is 80. And my grandmother has outlived 3 husbands. 3 of them have died. And I remember when I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, and my father, who's my grandmother's son, he was taking my sister and I to grandma's house. Now, we went to grandma's house all the time, so this was not some abnormal thing for our dad to take us my sister and I, to his mom's house, which is grandma's house. This is a normal thing. But this time, while we're on the way to her house in the car, my father issued us a warning to my sister and I. He said, when we get there, because we knew where we were going, he said, don't be asking any questions or anything like that. That's what my father said to us in the car. And he had never said that to us when we were going to grandma's house ever before. So it was peculiar to me that he was asking this question. It was a weird declaration for him to make. But once we got there, I understood why he was saying it. Because when we got there, first of all, we went to a different place. Grandma was not at the house that we had known her to live in. She was at a new house, and there was a new man there. She was not with my grandfather. I came to find out many years later in life, she had left my paternal grandfather, my dad's dad. He was still alive, but my grandma had left her husband and got with a different guy for whatever reason, which I didn't know at that time, but I found out later why. So she had left her husband, or at least my grandfather, and she had got with this different guy. And I was able to piece together over time that this had happened and she was with this new guy, but it was never explained to us. And this was an elephant in the room that lingered for years because it was never discussed. And I'm bringing that up to just as an illustration of this point. What are you completely ignoring that you simply don't want to talk about for whatever reason? It doesn't mean talking about it to some stranger, but talking about it to someone who obviously can see the same thing that you're seeing, but nobody's talking about it because everybody's just going to ignore it and act like it's not there. All right, that's silly. See, it's one thing when it's other people's relationships and other people's business when you don't want to talk about it. But it's another thing when it's your own issues and your direct life that we're talking about, and you're not talking about it, rather, because you simply don't want to address whatever it is that's going on. And this concept of the elephant in the room, again, as I said, harkens to the actual animal of an elephant. Everybody knows this is a very large animal. There's an elephant in your presence, and usually you don't see an elephant in a room. So it's kind of a funny metaphor because elephants usually don't exist in any kind of room because the room would have to be really, really big for an elephant to be inside of it. But if you're at the zoo, for example, or at some kind of a carnival or the circus, and we know these days people are getting really adamant about fighting against this. But if you see an elephant, let's say at the zoo, you know that the elephants are there. Right? If you go to the part of the zoo where the elephants are, you're noticing the elephants. You're not paying attention to probably any other animal because there ain't too many other animals around where the elephants hang out. Because that has to be a really, really big space because they're really, really big animals. They're hard to ignore because of how huge they are. So it's silly to try to act like the elephant is not there. So the question is, what elephants in your life or in your business are you currently ignoring? I'm going to leave that question there as we move on to point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is what are you pretending not to see? Number 2, checking your blind spots. Everyone knows what a blind spot is. If you don't, you'll understand in a moment. Now, maybe you're pretending not to see things, and maybe you really don't see them simply because you're not looking in the right places. So sometimes you can pretend to not see something. That's like the elephant in the room. We know is there, and you just don't want to talk about it for whatever reason. Maybe sometimes there is something going on that you are not seeing because the places that you're looking, that thing is not obvious or it's not showing itself to you. So when you're driving a car, this is where this concept comes from. They call this the blind spot. It's a spot when you're driving your vehicle and you're switching lanes to your left or to your right, is that spot that is right behind your vehicle and a little bit to the side. So either right behind you and to the left or right behind you and to the right, that your side view mirrors can't quite catch. Anything that's in that spot, you can't quite see it, but it's right there next to you. But based on your angles, you can't see that blind spot. So this is where a lot of car accidents used to take place back back before, let's say, the last 10 years. The vehicles that came out in the last 10 years or so, a lot of accidents would happen because of this, because somebody would be switching lanes and they simply didn't see the car that was right behind them and right to the side of them. So what's happened is now a lot of today's vehicles, newer models, they have these warning systems. They have a blind spot warning system where when you even put your signal on to switch lanes to the right or to the left, if there is a vehicle in your blind spot, the car's warning system will let you know, hey, don't move yet, don't switch lanes yet, because there's something in your blind spot. So before you even start moving, the car is already letting you know that there's something in your blind spot, which is a great idea by the car manufacturers. They all seem to have done this, regardless of the type of vehicle it is. Any of you got a vehicle, let's say in the last 5 years, your vehicle probably has this blind spot warning system so that you don't shift lanes into another vehicle that you just simply did not see. So the car audibly, well, either audibly with a beep or with at least some kind of a lighting system, lets you know there's another car over there before you make the move. Human beings, on the other hand, we are not vehicles. We do not have blind spot detection systems, at least not standard built into our hardware the same way that vehicles do. Now, we can have a blind spot detection system, but we have to create it and we have to maintain it on our own, as opposed to the car that just comes with it. Many cars come with it standard nowadays. So one system you can create, for example, is getting the right people around you and in your circle, or you getting in their circle, whatever way works, who can notice and point out when there is something in your blind spot that you are simply not seeing. One form of this is coaching. When you have things going on in your business and you're doing your business and you're doing your things and something is not quite right in your business, not quite going the way that you want it to go, you can go to your coach, you can go to your mastermind members and say, hey, this is the situation, this is what's happening. So what is anybody seeing here? What am I not getting? What am I missing? Or you may even go to the group and say, well, look, I think the problems are these three things here. And someone else, your coach, if they're good and they're insightful, they can look at your situation and say, well, look, those three things might be the issue, but what you're not noticing is things number 4, 5, 6, and 7. These things you're not even paying attention to. They may be in your blind spots because you simply were not keen to even look in the direction that your coach or a mastermind member or someone who really knows their stuff could point out for you. This is the value of having other high level people around you and making whatever investments you need to make to be around these high level people, because they will notice things that you don't notice and can save you a whole lot of time, effort, attention, energy, and money, so that you don't put too much of your resources into fixing a problem that doesn't even need to be fixed, while ignoring the problem that actually does need to be fixed. This is about insight, folks. It's not about information. It's about insight. Insight is about seeing the things that you need to see rather than focusing on the things that you are capable of seeing. Because sometimes, again, you're seeing things that you don't even need to fix. It's not broken, don't fix it. But the part that is broken, you don't even know about. This goes to it reminds me of the old anecdote of the big manufacturing plant that shut down. It was a huge manufacturing plant that was responsible for all the shipments coming out of a really big city. And the whole plant shut down because something was wrong with one of the machines, but nobody knew how to fix it. Nobody who was working there knew how to fix it. And the manager is sweating bullets because his career is on the line if he doesn't get this thing fixed. So they call in an emergency mechanic to come fix everything. The mechanic comes in, looks around for a minute or two, then pulls out a screw. He walks over to one area of this big machinery that's taking up this whole room, this really big warehouse size room. He pulls out a wrench, tightens one screw, and then all of a sudden everything starts working again, and all the men in the factory go back to work. And the manager comes over to the mechanic and says, well, thank you. You've done a great job. Thank you for saving me. How much do I owe you? And the mechanic says, you owe me $5,000. And I don't know what the number was. It could have been 25,000, could have been 5,000, could have been 10,000. Let's say $10,000. It sounds better. So the mechanic says $10,000. And the warehouse manager kind of looks at him funny and says, okay, I'll be happy to pay you. I just need you to give me an itemized invoice for what I'm paying you for. And the mechanic says, sure, I'll give you an invoice right now. Just give me a pen and paper. So they grab him a pen and paper, and the mechanic writes, tightening the screw, $1. Knowing which screw to tighten, $9,999. That's what insight is, folks. See, sometimes the fix that you need to implement is not really that hard of a fix. But if you never identify the right fix, then you'll never actually get around to doing it. And this is the challenge that many of you who are listening to me right now, you have in your life and in your business, is that you don't have a problem doing the work. You don't have an effort issue. What you have is an insight issue, that you don't know where to put your effort. You're putting your effort on things that are not really making that much of a difference, simply because you don't notice what you need to notice. You're noticing the wrong things and not noticing the right things. So this is one of those issues here of your blind spots. So you need people around you who, when you get a good idea, for example, you can run it by them and let them poke holes in whatever you're thinking about doing. You can go to this person and say, look, this is what I'm thinking about doing. This is my idea. Tell me why this might be a crappy idea. Tell me what I'm not noticing. Tell me where I might make a mistake here. Tell me why I maybe shouldn't do this at all. And again, it's not because they're trying to rain on your parade. This is you having the discipline and the mental toughness to understand that these people's job is to stress test any idea you have before you just go running out there and put a bunch of resources into something that simply does not work. So they're getting you ready for that. Or a person who will make you justify your idea. Okay, explain to me why this idea makes sense. Well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And they'll try to play devil's advocate and knock down everything you're thinking. And if you can't survive that conversation, then you ain't ready to go to the market with your idea. But if you don't have any high level people around you, then you won't do this. And instead, what you do is go rushing into the marketplace with a weak idea that you don't even realize is weak until it meets resistance in the real world. Everybody understand where I'm coming from here? Or sometimes you just need a person whose job is, and I kind of just explained this, to be the wet blanket. Wet blanket person is the person who will help you understand why you have a really bad idea, and they'll try to dissuade you from doing it. And if you, again, your idea can't stand up to the stress test of that conversation, then you ain't ready to go out to the marketplace. You have to have the discipline to have these people in place around you and listen to them. Or if these people already exist in your life, you got to have the discipline to actually engage them in conversation and let them talk to you. This is why group coaching programs matter. We have one in Work on Your Game University. This is why coaching matters. This is why accountability matters. This is why masterminds matter. Why? Because you can get other high-level people around you who can question and challenge you. And this is a safe space for you to be questioned and challenged, so you can see if your things that you come up with can actually stand up to resistance before they meet real world resistance. So this is like practice resistance, so you can meet real world resistance. So if you're being challenged hard in practice every day, then the games will be easy. Everybody understand that metaphorically. You also have to do the work to find these people who have the capability of doing this, because these type of people are few and far between. People who know that they're doing this and they're doing it in a way as to serve you and to help you, not in a way to be negative towards you or to beat you down. And also, you got to be the type of person who's willing to take it. And you got to be willing to give it as well. Can you do it as well as you can receive it? And this does not mean that these people don't exist, but they are few and far between. I happen to be one of these people. And I know some people who are like this. And I also know ain't too many of us. I know who they are when I meet them, and I know that it ain't so many of them. So I know what I'm looking for when I'm looking for these type of individuals. Moving on, point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is what are you pretending not to see? Number 3, notice your patterns. Human beings, all of us, are creatures of habits, which means we tend to do the same things over and over and over again, and not necessarily things that we need to be doing and things that are actually helping us, but we do the same things over and over again, even the bad, useless stuff. And since none of us is perfect, we can notice our patterns, not only in the stuff that we want to do over and over, but also in the stuff that we don't want to do, but we keep doing anyway. So what problems do you find yourself having over and over again, whether in your business, in your relationships, in your own mind, with your money, with your health, and your career, and anywhere else? Where do you find yourself running into the same problems over and over again? Anywhere you notice that you keep having the same recurring issues, there is a link there in your personal pattern of thought and action that is leading to that repetitive outcome. Your job is to identify what that pattern is that leads to that circumstance and then fix it. This is what I call making the unconscious conscious. This is something that I talk about in my book, Work on Your Game. I talk about it in the Mirror of Motivation. I talk about it in the Third Day. I talk about it in Bulletproof Mindset, part of Work on Your Game University. I talk about this a lot in a lot of different areas. I talk about this because 85% of what we do is unconscious, our thoughts and our actions, also known as habits. So we have to get conscious about those so that we can change our lives. And when you change something that you're doing all the time, it's controlling 85% of your output, then it's going to change your life. But you got to get conscious about it. Many of us go through life completely unconscious of these things, and that's why they never get fixed. So we got to start noticing things that we generally don't notice. Good news is these things that you are not noticing are right there in front of you for you to see. You just are not seeing them right now. They're a blind spot for you, not in that you visually can't see them. It's just you're not looking at them from the right angle. When you change your angle, change your perspective, then all of a sudden you can see things in a lot different way. The easiest way to change your perspective, folks, is to get around other people who already have a different perspective, and they can simply share that perspective with you. And then you can say, oh, you know what? I didn't think about it that way. That's a different way of looking at it. I appreciate you sharing that. Now I can see what you're pointing out. Again, this is what happens in masterminds. This is what happens in group coaching. This is what happens when you have a coach. But if you don't have those things, then you are forever stuck with the same problems. So with that said, let's recap today's class, which is what are you pretending not to see? Again, I heard Donald Trump talk about this, pre-politics Donald Trump. And again, he has some really good business principles that he talked about that, again, if you can separate the messenger from the message, a lot of good stuff you can get from the books that he wrote. I don't think he wrote any books since he got into politics. So all the books that he had before that, I read all of them. Number one, addressing elephants in the room. We know what an elephant is, right? Very big animal. You usually can't ignore an elephant if it was inside of a room. Usually you don't see an elephant in a room because the floor is probably not strong enough to hold an elephant. So if there's an elephant in the room, there's no way you can ignore it. But a lot of people live their lives just like that, ignoring the really big thing that everybody obviously can see. Number two, checking your blind spots. Sometimes you simply cannot see something. So cars have warning systems for blind spots. Humans do not have these warning systems, but you can install one by getting people around you who can see things that you simply do not see. These people are few and far between, but they do exist. Number three, noticing your patterns. Human beings are creatures of habit, which means we tend to do the same stuff over and over again. And since none of us is perfect, we should be able to notice our patterns, not only in the things that turn out the way we want, but also in things that turn out opposite from how we want. Get conscious about the unconscious things that we are doing in our lives, and then we can fix them. We can change things, and we can get things going in the way that we want them to go. So with all that said, folks, make sure you are texting me so you get my Monday motivation text every Monday, free of charge, guaranteed to have you focused, sharp, and on point to start your week. And you are ready to get coached by me directly. You want to get into my mastermind group coaching program, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. All that said, everybody, make sure that you text me already. I already told you about that. You're in the university and work on your game. Dre, all